What's up, everyone? Kriddle here. Nick had a stream last night that was about 2 hours and 45 minutes long. I'm going to do a quick summary, hopefully, of what Nick said, but most of the stream was going over the patch notes for the alpha test, and these will be things that are going to be coming into the game for whenever the next open test is as well. So what I did is I went through the entire stream and I took a bunch of screenshots, and I'm going to be showing you all of those about all the bits and pieces of the patch notes that were spread out throughout the entire 2 hours and 45 minutes. So hopefully shortening that a little bit if you are just interested in the patch notes. But as far as things that Nick said that pertain to Monsters and Memories, I'm going to go through a list here real quick to kind of give you an idea, just in case you want to jump to some different points of the stream. So around the 3.5 minute mark or so, he started talking about the stats. That was a stat change. We did a video yesterday on that. You can go see those stat changes yourself. If you log into the game and go to the rel server and click on create new character, you can see all of those different stat changes. One thing you can't see, however, are the racial traits. He talks about those at the 18-minute mark. There is no tooltip currently on that character select to be able to see the different racial traits, and then that also includes the racial resist. So he did show a little bit of that off in the 18-minute mark, and you do have to actually log into the game to be able to see those things at this time. Around the 22 minutes, 45 second mark, he starts reading the patch notes. Again, I'll go over all of those very quickly, hopefully. We'll have screenshots for that. And then at 24 minutes, he talks about the reroll. So we'll go over that again here just in a second. But something specific that Nick said is if you have an illusion, currently it's a bug. If you have an illusion on when you do the reroll, it bugs things out. So make sure you don't have any illusions on. 32-minute mark, he talks about some ability notes. And then at 34:30, he talks about the Hearth of the Ranger, which right now is basically an ability that Rangers get to summon a campfire, and it uses 8 wood. It doesn't seem to be any different than just using a campfire skill, but that may change in the future. So if you want to hear Nick talk about that, it's 34 minutes in. Around the 40-minute mark, discusses why some spells are adjusted in levels and that they may be adjusted more. He's talking about, I forget the exact spell that he's talking about, but some spells move up and down in levels, you know, from one tier to another tier, usually 4 levels in different. And the reason he talks about that is because they're trying to figure out where they want to be with that. So if you want to hear him discuss that around the 40-minute mark, 44-minute mark, he talks about Chicago-style pizza and food and hot dogs. And then they go into some food over in Britain as well. They just go off on his tangent about food from 44 minutes until about the 1 hour mark, where he gets back into talking about the patch notes. Again, reading through some patch notes. At 1 hour, 48 minutes, he starts talking about random game discussions. That goes on for about 20 minutes, just games that Nick likes to play. And then around the 2 hour, 12-minute mark, the interrupt discussion came up. So talking about if we should have interrupts that are 100% guaranteed to always hit but have a longer cooldown, or if they should just increase the chance to hit. They are keeping an eye on that. So if you have feedback on that, be sure to send it over to them. Right now, nothing is going to change, but if they get enough feedback and they can look and all that kind of stuff. So that an interrupt discussion has kind of came up very, very briefly. Around the 2 hour, 35-minute mark, Nick did say that he does plan to play Monsters and Memories, but not the way that he would like to, which is basically going really hard into the game. He'll probably leave that to the Adrenaline Online, if you have heard of that game, which is kind of like a Minecraft EverQuest style game that is in development right now. And then around the 38-minute mark, he talked about an auction house being in the game or not being in the game. And right now they are not going to be putting an auction house into the game, but they are going to have some pretty cool merchant and commerce things coming out at some point in the future, but no timeline on that. That's pretty much what Nick said that pertains to Monsters and Memories, other than reading through the patch notes. So now we're going to take a look at the patch notes themselves from the screenshots that I took. All right, so here are the actual patch notes. We're going to hopefully go through them quickly, but these are the screenshots that I took from the stream and hopefully zoom them in a little bit more so they're a little bit easier to read for everyone. They are notes from Ollie and Nick. It starts out with Ollie, and then it goes to Nick, and then it kind of goes back and forth. I don't note on here who wrote what patch notes, so just know that it was Ollie and Nick that did the patch notes, and then that's pretty much it. So starting out here, Ollie basically was saying that he did the math on the bonus XP for groups, parties of 4, 5, and 6, and said that he feels like they're pretty liberal, so they're going to keep those the same for now. But he did note down here at the bottom, as long as you get 2 kills additional per person per camp respawn timer, you will be coming out ahead by adding people. So he's basically saying that you're going to be able to get more XP for having larger groups, assuming everyone is contributing to that. Of course, if you feel that is not the case, be sure to give your feedback. This will be in as of now on the closed test, and then it'll be in for the future open test whenever that may be. So definitely give your feedback on that. Here, they tried to put in the patch. I had to abort it because Nick, when he put in the changes to the stats that you can now see on the Rel server, those were a bit too high. Ollie took notice of that and was like, whoa, we need to stop here and need to adjust these. So they adjusted those before putting in the patch. Next day, they actually did take the patch down, or the server down, and put in the patch here. And then here, they did talk about a reroll. So you're going to be able to go to your class trainer and reroll your stats to the new stats. So you will not have the new stats when you first log into the game. You will have to go to the trainer. I believe I have a screenshot of that patch note here in just a second as well. Moving on from that, we have this patch note, which basically is the beginning of the actual patch notes for the 2020. So this update covers more than a month of work, over 670 comments, and too many content changes to track. This is hopefully a good number of changes, but I am sure we missed some. So basically, I'm going to let you all pause the video and read through all of these, but we have a lot of really cool changes here. Some housing being put in, some balance changes going in, a lot of these damage delay of the weapons is rebalanced. I've heard that these are actually lowered quite a bit. The armor has been lowered quite a bit. So you're not going to really want to use the dropped stuff. I think you're going to want to use the crafted stuff. So I think the crafted is now better and the drop stuff is now worse, I believe, is what I am hearing. I have not been able to check that myself. So that's where we're at with that. Int and wisdom scaling is now in. Charisma effects, all of those things are in. And some really cool new visual effects here. So look forward to those when you are able to get into the game. Next up, we have a lot of environment changes, tons of those. Again, pause the video if you want to be able to read some of these. Like I said, I want to get through these fairly quickly, but a lot of environment changes here. Ability changes, adding in new abilities, all sorts of stuff. Of course, these are all Ollie's notes that he put out, and Nick actually made a joke about Ollie's are kind of all over the place, and his are nice and pristine and look perfect. So you'll see the difference when we get to Nick's post. But there you go. If you want to pause at some point, be able to read through all of those for you. I'm not going to go into every single bit of detail. I do want to say down here, though, is it this one? I don't think it's this one, but there is a new change where they allow you to test out the different filters. So I'll try to stop when we hit that one and talk about it for a second. But anyway, there's those. We'll move on from that now. We got a lot of UI changes here, tons and tons of changes. So we're just trying to get all of that out to you all so you all can read it. Next up, we'll move on from that. More UI changes up there at the top, and then it goes into tech changes. This should be all of the tech changes here, I believe. There may be a couple more here on the next slide that I have, but this is where, this is the test filters right here. So you can actually do /test filters, and in every single window that you have different filters highlighted, it'll tell you what filters are highlighted in those windows. Very good feature when you're trying to make sure that you have all of your different chat windows ready. They did say somewhere in here, Nick did mention it, that your chat may be messed up. Your UI could be completely messed up. So you might want to go in and actually delete your UI files and your chat files just so that it remakes them if you are having issues with those when you do log in. So moving on from that, some art changes, some trade skill. Let me move my giant head here so you all can read those. But yeah, some new stuff here. He did mention that the smelting now requires molds. This was already in the game. So some of the things were not added to previous patch notes. They are now in the patch notes. So that's that. Moving on from that, we have some content changes, lots of content changes up here. They added in, I think, is it here that they added in Scarwood? Anyway, they itemized a lot of stuff. So you might want to read through a bunch of these and see where they itemize things. They actually itemize Scarwood. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. I ran through it during the last playtest, just kind of running around. And it's a really big zone, but there wasn't a lot to do in there. So now that they've gone through and actually itemized some of that stuff, it's going to be really cool. Added some itemization to the named cultists and glass flats. Fixed some locked doors and grain cellar. We noticed that in the last play test. So lots of really cool things here. And then new sound effects for the combat and boat and all of these things. Lots of new sound effects. So definitely listen for those. I believe Nick showed those off in a previous stream that he did, showed off some of those sound effects. Here, we talk about the rerolls have been granted to everyone, so they may take advantage of the new stat limits. If you're already in game, you will have to /reload. I've also heard that you may have to actually relog, and reload does not do it. You may have to actually log completely out. So you have to go to your class trainer to retrain those abilities. That's what I was talking about before. And this is a picture of the actual trainer. So you go to them and you click the little train. It is absolutely free. So 0 cost across the board here. You click it and you'll be able to retrain. Here they were talking about if you're having issues with your UI, go to this link right here, something I was just talking about. You may need to delete your entire, all those files, the JSON files, I believe, that are in there to fix that UI. So that's where you need to go for that if you are having issues when you do log in. Moving on from that, this is, I believe, where Nick's notes start. So this is a shout out to the closed testers notification, and then he starts that here. So we have racial and class stat differences. Some of this is going to be repeat of what Ollie had posted, but just in Nick's format. Aggro range increase here, which definitely be sure to be on the lookout for that when you're able to log in. And then he talked about some of the different things that he changed recently in one of his streams. I believe I talked about that in his last stream. So a lot of the fletching changes here. So arrows are now created in 100, 500, and 1000 quantities, and got rid of the or arrow creation for 20 and 200 quantities has been removed. So they basically removed those and added in the new ones. So now it's 100 arrows instead of 20, and I believe 500 instead of 200 or whatever it is. Anyway, I believe that's how they changed that. So scrapping all that kind of stuff. New itemization patch or pass that they talked about right here. And then this might be another big one for some of you that are using the Idra's Blessing. This is actually your Spirit of the Wolf or Spirit of Wild. You can no longer give it to another person by using the potion. You can only use it on yourself. All these racial traits, I'll get my big head again out of the way so you can see the bard changes here. Lots of changes to the different classes. This is where you're probably going to want to pause quite a bit so you can see all of that. Haste line, that's one that I do want to call out. The haste line was removed, or not removed, but reduced quite a bit here. I do not know the exact numbers. I don't think Nick talked about that in his stream, but they were reduced a significant amount from what I understand. So definitely check those out. Necromancers did get a haste buff line, I believe. We'll talk about that here in a second when we get down there, and then all the bard changes as well. Oh, this counterattack right here, Nick did mention the ability counterattack is actually a dodge ability. Right now, they do not have a parry ability. He's looking at possibly adding in parry for archers, but this is basically a dodge bonus or dodge ability. So you can check that out from his stream. That's basically what he was saying. Let's see, moving on from that, focus concentration, also, that was the one where we showed it in the last video that I made. It's up to plus 1,000 to your concentration bonus so that Inquisitors, Paladins, and Shadow Knights can actually cast spells while tanking. And Nick did say in his stream that they made some other adjustments to make concentration a little bit better and just feel a little bit better in general. So hopefully when you get back into the game, you can cast a little bit better on those tanking caster classes. Moving on from that, we got a kill command now for the Beastmaster and a new rat form. This supposedly was added in previously in a previous update, but the actual scroll was not added in. They actually did add in the scroll, and they added in the haste and adrenaline rapidity spells to Beastmaster, as well as, and we'll see here in a second, the Inquisitor got those as well. The Cleric Blessed Barrier line reduced the cooldown is now shared. And then Supplication, this is a really big change right here. So Supplication now gives your melee attacks a chance to activate Fulfillment. So basically, every time you attack, you have a chance to activate fulfillment, which is right down here. We'll talk about it in a second. Or you have a secondary way of activating fulfillment. So additionally, when last hitting an enemy with Holy Strike or your direct damage spells, bringing an enemy to light, granting you fulfillment. So either of these two things will give you the fulfillment buff, which increases your mana generation from 1 at level 6, from 1 at level 1 up to 6 at level 60 for 2.5 minutes. So basically, clerics are going to want to either get the proc from melee or get the last hit if they can once every 2.5 minutes to get a bonus mana regeneration. Very nice ability there. The druids have a grip of nature now as castable on other players. This is the one that roots enemies when you get attacked. It is on a cooldown, but it's 100% chance to root the enemy that attacked you when they hit you. The example that Nick gave is if, say, you have an enchanter that is getting attacked by some mobs, the druid can cast that on the enchanter and kind of get the mobs off of them. The enchanter can just move away. He did mention these changes right here. The nature skin line you see goes up to level 56. So he changed all of these. This was that note that I had mentioned earlier. If I can go back to my notes really quickly, and where he adjusted some levels. This is where he was talking about that. He adjusted the levels on some of those spells. So that was around the 44-minute mark he was talking about this. And then they also added in tree form to the druids, which in EverQuest, I believe, was a health and mana regen ability. I'm not sure exactly what it does here, but I believe that's what it does in EverQuest. So it's probably similar in this game as well. And then now I can bring my big head back because you can actually see some of this stuff. But there's some changes to Elementalist and Fighter. Here, this is one thing that he did want to call out was the attack speed buff was reduced here. And somebody said, hey, was this a nerf to Elementalist? It's not a nerf to Elementalist. It's just a nerf to haste in general. So don't think that this is just a nerf across the board. Or for Elementalist, it is a nerf across the board, in fact. He also talked about removing the Rusty Dagger. I believe he said that these were not removed, but those should be removed in the future. And now we have like Summon Arrows and Summon Fire Shield and some Summon Thrown Daggers, those kind of things. And then fighters now get the Critical Strike ability, but this is also a new ability, Merciless Attack right here. So now Merciless Attack gives you like 100% chance to Critical Strike for the duration of it, which I believe is like 12 seconds or something, he said. I don't remember where we talked about that, but I believe that's what was talked about. Anyway, it's a duration ability that gives you 100% strike, and Crippling Blow is basically Critical Strike while you are Berserk or at low health. So that's how those work. And then they did lower the damage on the Frenzy, and you can see here, and change some of the cooldowns. And then the Frenzy and Shield Slam now use GCD. So basically, another thing that Nick was talking about is they changed to where I believe it's Frenzy, Rend, and Armor Break all now trigger the global cooldown. So spamming those abilities is no longer the best, most optimal way to play. He did talk about that during his stream as well. Inquisitor changes here. So we talked about the haste a second ago. The Inquisitors also got that haste. And then some other Inquisitor changes. I really like that the mana burn line here was reduced. So this is really going to be beneficial to Inquisitors. They're now going to be able to actually go up against spellcasters much better, reducing their mana burn spellcast time by half, and then also increasing their concentration abilities with that focus concentration and stuff. So they're going to be able to actually mana drain while tanking. Dominate Mind is increased from 15 seconds to 1 minute. This is the unresistible guaranteed charm ability they have. So the duration going up 4 times is really, really nice. So some other good stuff here. Nick actually changed the Necromancer. All of this stuff, like some of these weren't in the patch notes, and he changed those during the stream. But these are all new abilities that are coming in. This added HP Leech ability line. This is a really cool line. I don't know if he said that these are going to be able to be cast on other players, but I feel like that's what the whole point of these are, is you can cast them on another player and gives them the Life Leech proc or something. That's what I feel like it is, but I don't think he actually said what they did specifically. So added those in. And then some things here. We talked about the Druid Hearth of the Ranger. When I first read that, I was like, what? Hearth of the Ranger? Is that going to be a teleport back to town, like a Hearthstone kind of thing from WoW? It is not. It is Hearth of the Ranger is a summon campfire ability for the Ranger. Moving on, we have Shadow Knight. Here, getting their aura is reduced. So it was from 5% at level 1 up to 20% at level 60 to 10% across the board. The range haste holds its values until the next update. So whenever that happens, which it might have already happened, they did do another update during the night. Apparently, Nick was talking about that quite a bit, that they were going to be doing another update. And then added in Shaman Bear form. Nick did say that this does not have any stats associated with it at this time, or at least he doesn't believe it does, but may get some stats associated with it in the future. And then move some more spells around here that you can see. They moved spells, up or down depending on what Nick felt was better for the class. Again, referencing back to that previous statement that I said where they moved some spells around. They're still looking at all of those. And the last thing here is they added critical strike for wizard spells. And then the last thing that they talked about here was a hot fix. This was the last night's hot fix that they were going to be doing. Nick kind of mentioned this throughout the stream. So the moving of spells was broken. It referenced that, I think, somewhere up at the top that they changed that. That apparently was broken and that was fixed. Auto UI scaling has been removed for now and will be revisited in the future. This is one of the things that was breaking the UI, apparently. Monk, Bard, and Rogue class trainers will now train Safe Fall skill. So you actually go to the trainer and train that Safe Fall skill. Hearth of the Ranger can't be scribed. Apparently, that was an issue, that it couldn't be scribed. I don't know. And then summoned weapons have been rebalanced to better reflect intended damage. So I don't know if they went in at too high or too low, but they were rebalanced in last night's hotfix. I believe that is everything it is. So that is all of the patch notes throughout the entire stream that Nick did last night. Of course, if you want to have Nick's commentary on all of that, go check his stream out. I'll be putting that down in the description below if you want to link to that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.